Hello children over 30, it's Drew back here with another product review, and today we're going to talk about pick frames and the boots that they come with. So I guess we'll split this into like 3 sections. So first I want to talk about my experience with the company in general. Second, I want to talk about using the product for its intended use. And third, I'm probably just going to rant for a little bit. So I'd been kind of scoping out these frames for a little while. I mean, I'm into inline and figure skating, so it seems logical that I would stumble upon them and be interested in them. And I didn't immediately pick some up just because of the price point on them. So their nicer models come with good like Jackson figure skate boots, and those can get pretty expensive. And then the frames by themselves, even though they come with wheels and bearings, I was a little bit speculative maybe of the wheels or weary of them. And I'll touch on that a little bit more later. But yeah, with wheels and bearings, I think they're just over $200, which is a little bit much to spend on something that I couldn't really find a lot of information on. I mean, there are some YouTube videos, and I found like one review of them from like a mom that got them for her daughter, and that was pretty helpful. But what made me end up pulling the trigger on them was they had these boots with, frames and wheels, of course, on them, on sale for like $119 or something like that, which is of course cheaper than just the frame. When I called them, they said really the only difference between the frames that came on these and then the other ones was just the finish on them. I mean, other than that, it's the same exact frame. This one's just a little bit shinier. So I thought, awesome, worst case scenario, I'm getting free boots with the set of frames that I want. And buying them in general was a pretty good experience. I called and talked to one of the part owners, his name's John, for probably a good half hour about them, and he was more than happy to answer all my questions and stuff. But when I ended up getting them, they came with shorter frames than this. These ones are a little bit longer, but they're mounted about like that. So like with the toe pick about level with the end of the boot. I sent John a couple of emails, and we ended up talking on the phone and stuff, and apparently the pick is supposed to come out 1 1/8 inches from the toe of the boot. And this is really super, super important because, as you may have noticed, with the pick, it causes the front wheel to be shifted back a little bit. So, you can only move that front wheel so far back before it's like a completely unstable skating experience. And that's what I experienced with the frames that came on this boot. It was completely unstable. And they had some sort of contracted manufacturer to make these boots, and I think put the frames on them too. So I think they probably just put on the one that they thought looked best or something like that. And I know they're changing manufacturers on these, so hopefully the next one will kind of get it right. But yeah, out of the box, it was completely unusable. And so I talked to John again and told him kind of what was going on. And he ended up sending me these 10 1/4. The other ones were 9 3/4, I think, for free because, the other ones weren't working and, it wasn't providing a usable skating experience at all. So really awesome on his part, just the whole thing with, talking to me for, again, like a good half hour just the first time, and then helping me like troubleshoot problems I was having. And I mean, it was great. I couldn't have asked for anything better. So now let's get on to an actual review of the stuff. They call it like their urban skate or something like that. And it's pretty stylish, I think. It looks nice. I can tell you though that it's not really like a figure skating boot. It's a little bit higher on the side, which I could see them doing in order to get more toward that urban goal of, something that you can use outside of like a completely flat surface, either indoors or like a tennis court or something like that. They compensate for that a little bit by giving it this nice V-cut in the back, which was appreciated. The boot itself is pretty nice and supportive. The footbed that came with it was pretty useless, so I would plan on getting something better. Sizing wise, I'm a 9 in Jackson, usually like a 9.5, 10 in shoes. K2s and rollerblades, I usually wear a 10. And these were a 10, which I was advised to get based on my size 9 Jackson. And my toes kind of feel a little bit, well, they touch the end, and they touch the end a little bit more than I would prefer. I tried to put some super feet in here to kind of, raise my heel up and get it back a little bit, but because of this giant heel lift on the boot anyway, it was just way too much. So all in all, I'm not completely sure what they were going for with this. If the goal was to make a really good, again, urban skate that you could still do figure skating stuff with, there's a lot of stuff that I would like to see on these that I don't. But for like figure skating purposes, like if you're getting these to do figure skating tricks, these boots really aren't the way to go. So I would probably just save money and get like some Jackson boots. Unless you just need like some other boots for hockey or quad skating or something like that. They'd probably work for that. Next up, we have the frame. So as I mentioned, these come in a bunch of different sizes. If you get down to a small enough size, I know they start getting into 3-wheel stuff. When I was talking to John on the phone, he mentioned that, with wheelbases being that short, a lot of times 3 wheels are pretty conducive, but he found that with larger foot sizes, like you didn't really want to do that because it distributes the radius kind of weird, which is, in line with a lot of the stuff that I've been thinking about lately. I know they do have a competitor called Snow White, and they just make 3-wheel inline stuff. And I think, again, if you have a small foot, like for women or just very small guys, 3-wheel would probably work out, great. For me, having a size 10, 28 centimeter foot, just not so much. Anyway, so this fits 4 up to 72 millimeter wheels. So the wheelbase from here to here, taking off the pick on the front, of course, is I think just over 22 centimeters, 220 millimeters, between 22 and 23. So super, super short. The rocker on these, according to John, they went with what was closest to like an 8.5 foot radius on a, ice skating blade. I think on mine, they use a 9 foot radius, so a little bit bigger, but the rocker on the outside ends up being a little bit more, I think, than 2 millimeters. Half millimeters are kind of hard to see, but it seems like more than 2 millimeters. So of course, that shorter wheelbase, that higher rocker, these things are swivelly, 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 swivelly. It's so easy to do like everything in them. It's really nice, actually. Again, with this though, the alignment on them becomes like a huge issue because you're working with that small of a wheelbase. So I found, because the ones that came with the other boots, I ended up putting on some other boots, and I was playing with the alignment, and this front wheel you really want somewhere like after the ball of your foot, but before like the main part of your big toe. So somewhere along that like first joint. And the farther back you have it, obviously the easier and more natural it's going to be to get up on the pick and, do stuff related to that. But it's also less conducive for just cruising, rolling around, stuff like that. So that's kind of a balance issue of, what you want to do with them, what's more important to you. I ended up with it, I think, about right in the middle. I think, which is a good compromise. The mounting you can see on these is just like a figure blade mount would be. They made them to go on a Jackson boot, so that's not surprising at all. And then the picks themselves on these, they actually have a couple styles. They have this other one that came with them. I like the older gray ones a little bit more. I think they're just a little bit bigger and the material's a little bit different, but I've had more success doing spins and stuff with them for whatever reason. So now on to the bad stuff. So these screws that you can see in the side of the pick itself, you don't really want to move around at all. It's important that it's a nice stable base. And they did an excellent job making it wide enough to where, the frame bolt keeps it really pretty secure. I think these screws are only in here as like an extra measure. Maybe for extra heavy people it makes a difference. But for me, like every time I've went out and skated these, I've lost a screw at least once. So it's a super pain. It's just not working for whatever reason. If they want to have this 2-point system, they really need to move over to some sort of, 2-axle system or something like that. Or maybe just making this main one like a triangle shaped bolt, I think would achieve very similar results. And like I said, just the size of it in relation to the hole that it fits in is usually more than enough to keep it stable. But it's on the frame and it doesn't work, so it's worth mentioning. Second, the axles. So it comes with 6 millimeter axles as opposed to 8, which I'm not really against. I mean, for the stuff that they're being used for, like there's no real reason why they would absolutely have to use a big BV 8 millimeter axle. but the axles themselves are kind of crappy. I found myself having to tighten them like every time after I use them. And I've only been using them, you know, on like tennis courts and stuff like that. So I imagine if I went out and tried to do any distance with them, I would probably risk one of them just coming out altogether. Which, you know, given what they're intended for, which is, again, skating on tennis courts or some sort of contained, really flat area, that's not necessarily a huge deal. But you know, the fact that they are inline frames and they do have the capability of going out and beyond that area and being, you know, this really fun experience to just go exploring stuff in. It would be nice if the hardware could keep up with those sort of demands, which aren't a ton to ask for by any means, in my opinion. Of course, you could also just put some Loctite on there. Personally, I don't like to do that just because I'm really picky with like wheel rotation. If I pick up my skate and one of the wheels is even slightly more grooved to the inside, I'll flip it around. So I really don't want to put a whole ton of Loctite on the bolts and risk stripping them, you know, from swapping them so much, which again, with the quality of the bolts, I could see myself doing that. Next, the use of the pick itself isn't, well, there's some differences from ice skates. On my figure skates, the pick is really just, I mean, it's right there. Like if you want it, it's right there. And even sometimes when you don't want it and you get a little sloppy, it's right there. With these, and again, placement in relation to parts of your foot is going to influence this, how readily you can get onto it. But in my experience, readily getting onto it wasn't necessarily as much of an issue as just the distance from the ground in general. And I'll post a link down in the description to that, I think he's a Russian guy that I found that's really good on these. But you can see when he goes in for 1 foot spins, like the angle of his foot is like so high. Like it's way higher than anything you would see on ice. So ideally for just figure skate maneuvers, I think these picks should be a decent amount closer to the ground. I could see them lifting them up a little bit for that, again, inline capability of going out and around, and you know, you don't want to be tripping over every little stick because your toe pick is so close to the ground. But again, there are other features of this frame that serve as, you know, another limiting factor toward that sort of end goal. Next thing, the spacers on this frame are just kind of these little things that fit into the side of the wheel. Yeah, they look like that. And this is just kind of weird. Like, I don't know if I've seen other skates do this. Usually on aluminum frames, there's some sort of, I mean, either they extrude it or they machine it out. But having it be this separate tiny little piece that's gonna probably get lost, it's at some point when you're changing the wheels, it's just kind of silly. You know, even if they went the more traditional route of making the hole a little bit bigger and then having something like this that fit into the frame itself, that would be preferable to having them just kind of sit in the bearings on top of the spacers. Yeah, I don't really know what the logic was behind that. It kind of makes me even more worried about like jumps and stuff like that. Like I could see, it seems like more fragile, you know, like I could break one jumping or something. Last thing, these wheels. These are 3-turn Harmony wheels, and the other ones are Harmony Axle 6.0 wheels. I was a little bit hesitant to try either because clear wheels are notoriously just kind of terrible. And these, to different degrees, sort of fall into that. So the 6.0 axles are the better of the two, but they both have this problem where they're really, really soft. I think they're like an 80A, which can feel kind of nice, especially with this big rocker. Having squishy wheels like that probably chills it out a little bit, but they don't really grip that well. They slide all over the place. Even on like the textured tennis court surface, I found myself slipping out on a bunch of stuff that I shouldn't have been. Nobody that wants a soft wheel wants a wheel that's going to slide all over the place. And nobody that wants a wheel that's going to slide wants a soft wheel. They also wear a little bit weird. They look like they would chunk out really easy. I haven't chunked them out yet, but I could definitely see it happening. They do have some nicer wheels. They're called Geneva. They wouldn't tell me the hardness on those. I do know it's harder, so I wouldn't imagine it being harder than like an 85A or something like that, though. If you went up to like an 88A with this rocker, like it would feel pretty scary. So yeah, somewhere in like the 80 to 85A. And I can't really speak on those. They have to be better. But when I swap these out, I'm probably going to go with like some undercovers or Sebas or something like that. So all of that negative stuff aside, they do a very good job of feeling like an aluminum frame should. They, with their ADA crap wheels and ABEC 5 bearings, are noticeably faster than my Solomon frames that have the 72 millimeter wheels that are extra hard and the bone Swiss 6 bearings in them. The toe pick apparatus, while not ideal, does open the door for all of the elements that it should. You can do 1-foot spins on these. If you follow me on Instagram, you can see I've gotten a couple of rotations down. You can do toe jumps on these and feel secure about it, which is awesome. It's an awesome feeling. It's awesome to just the whole idea of taking those elements and taking them off the ice and out into the interactable 3D kind of world is just so exciting to me. So for all those reasons, I'm really happy that this frame exists. So now kind of getting into rant territory. You know, I think this product and the idea for this product are cool. I think they have a lot of potential. I'm just not sure where they see themselves like in the grand scheme of things, or like what they're going for. So to me, I mean, if I had a kid and the kid was just an amazing figure skater or showed, you know, really good signs of being able to be a good figure skater, I would put them on ice. There are just going to be more opportunities for them there. Sure, it's going to be a little bit more expensive, and I could see this being a nice, you know, budget alternative for people that can't afford, you know, private ice time and, you know, all that sort of stuff. And figure skates get real expensive real quick. But, you know, aside from that, there are just more opportunities there for people that want to do figures. I mean, you know, pick skating isn't in the Olympics, and that's really all you have to say about that. On the other side of that, though, I mean, inline skates you can take anywhere. I mean, that's the great thing about them. You can have this skate that's designed for figures, and you can put it in all sorts of different situations that aren't going to have an equivalent on ice. Even as simple as like going down a bike path and doing, you know, power pulls and toe jumps and stuff like that. I mean, that is appealing for a lot of people. And there are so many directions that could be taken in. I could see the slalom world getting really into toe picks. People like me who are just in love with footwork in general and like to grind sometimes too. Somebody that already figure skates and hates that every time it's a nice day outside, they're inside on a frozen lake working on their stuff. And then below that, you have all sorts of subsets. You know, I mean, there are people who really love figure skating, but would be really happy with themselves being able to do like a 3-turn on a bike path. You have people who really love slalom and don't see themselves being able to compete with, say, Naomi Grigg on her own level, you know, but theoretically they could take something like this and bring a new dimension to the game that their competition isn't even using. So, I mean, again, I could see immediate appeal there. For everybody that's into like the flat land wizard stuff and then, you know, aggressive kind of peppered in on top of that. I can tell you from personal experience that doing a gazelle into a toe jump feels pretty tight. And again, you know, the toe jumps and the 1-foot spins, that's just more dimensions to the game. That's more options that you have. That's more tricks in your vocabulary. So to me, personally, that's where the appeal of these lies. It's not that, you know, oh, I don't feel like spending $7 to get into the ice rink today, so I'm just going to go to the tennis court and use these instead. I mean, that's a pretty lame reason to buy a product in general. For me, it's that sort of potential of cross-application and doing figure skating things that I can't do on an ice rink. So I would really like to see them explore that direction more. And it seems like they're already kind of on their way. The fact that they made something and called it the Urban Skate and we're showing people how to use the toe picks like as brakes, I think is definitely a move in the right direction. I'm just not 100% sure about the way that it's being gone about, if that makes sense. First of all, again, this boot is just not ideal for that sort of application. And I have to give them kudos for trying, because designing a boot is a way bigger process than I would want to even undertake. You know, so the fact that they, you know, had a vision and went out and tried to make it work, I think is awesome, and, you know, shows a lot of work ethic and care and pride in what they do and a bigger vision for the overall future of this sport. But again, you know, making a boot is hard. Making a good boot is even harder. There are a lot of things I think that go into good inline skates that they don't necessarily think about or aren't familiar enough with to really bring it all together in that sort of way. So a better way, in my opinion, which, what is my opinion worth? But what I would like to see them do, I guess is a better way to put it, just focus on making a frame that fits on already existing good boots. There are all kind of mounts out there. There's 165 mounts, and UFS. Either of those, I think, with some sort of side rockering on the frame, to get your wheel alignment right would be great. I mean, they would probably have to make, again, multiple sizes of them, but they're already making multiple sizes of them. And they're all CNC machines, so it would be a little bit of work on the front end, and I think not a lot after that. But this mount, in my opinion, is what's really hindering that right now, because Jackson boots aren't ideal for that sort of application, nor are the other boots. So anybody that wants to take these and put them on a boot that's actually going to work for them has a lot of drilling and cutting and grinding and sanding in their future. And I wanted to do that. So I ended up putting them on some Salomon ST10 boots, which I'm going to have to review these at some point. But as you can see, to make them work, I had to drill and grind and cut. And I can already say, them not even being like a free skate boot, being an aggressive boot, and probably having a little bit more room in them than they should. I think downsizing one more size than I did and putting in like a thinner liner would really make that whole thing kind of come together. So I'm kind of on the lookout for size 8.5 Salomon shells. If you know anybody, hook me up. There's like a whole great big world out there of pre-existing boots that are fantastic. The Sebatrix is another boot that I could see working really well with these frames. I could see like some Metro blades working really well with these frames. Some of the lower cut K2s I could see working really well with these frames. That one may be kind of stretching it a little bit. But point being, there's a lot of skates that I could see working really well with these frames. And I would like to see them work to help facilitate that, Frame needs better hardware. If they're going to pursue the urban side thing, they really need to sort of meet rollerblading halfway. Don't buy the stock wheels. It would be cool if you could adjust the pick in the front up and down somehow, like some sort of rocker. All in all, unless you have a small foot, I would still say these are the best option for figure blading, but they still have a long way to go. So I hope that this video helps. I'll certainly be following them as a company in the future. I want to support their efforts and see what they do and what they come up with and, where they try to take this thing. So as I mentioned earlier, I'm going to probably do a whole video on that setup here in the future. And this plus that will sort of wrap up most of the figure blading stuff I'm going to do for a little while, I think. I got a whole bunch of other stuff coming up that I'm really excited to talk about. And I'll see you soon.